better. Boy.
Hey everyone, welcome into Toon Talk Weekly. This is the weekly cartoon podcast where we would typically talk all about cartoons. I say typically because if you're a longtime listener, you'll know that last week, even though we have weekly in the name, was the first week in 5 years that we missed a show. Things have been pretty hectic for me lately, just moving halfway across the country again and making a pretty big career change, but also Brad's been busy. Brad's been traveling and he's got all kinds of stuff going on running his company as well, so it's just kind of all over the place, and I've always been trying to figure out, probably for the last couple of years really, just trying to figure out what to do with the show. This is a show that has a really special place in my heart because it's my first ever podcast. It's literally the thing that finally, as a podcast lover for so long, before the huge serials of the world came out, I love the medium. I love the format of having this discussion. And I've always wanted to know what to do with this because it was my first one. I never know if how long do you hold on to your first podcast? I don't know. So that's kind of where we're at with this show, with Toon Talk Weekly. So of course, if you're jumping in and you were looking for whatever the new cartoon was going to be this week, I apologize. I don't have one this week. It's been a pretty tough decision trying to figure out what to do with this because steadily we've grown over the last 5 years doing the show. It all started with one episode of Adventure Time, and the idea for the podcast sprang up, I think, when we were at a bar or something, but it was this episode of Adventure Time where all of these business people show up to solve a problem, but they end up just creating all of their own problems because they just try to apply these, I think I know this is right, and this is a business thing you should do here, and that kind of thing. And the original idea for the podcast was actually going to be that we were going to distill a business lesson. Startups and business and stuff were pretty popular in 2013. So, and we were just going to grab business lessons from all kinds of shows, and kind of see what we could gain from that. And it quickly spiraled into something very different, but I think better in the long run for it, which is not necessarily needing a theme. The cool part about Toon Talk Weekly is that it's evergreen. It's, even if we were to end the show forever, the episodes are still, they're worth something. If you happen to like our personalities, if you happen to like our opinions on shows, or you just want to hear someone talk about one of your favorite shows, the show really doesn't go out of style. There might be bits of news and stuff that we threw into the beginning of shows that might be not relevant anymore because, hey, this cartoon's coming out. Hey, by the way, it's been out for 10 years, or 2 years now. 10 years. So it's been tough. It was tough to miss a week last week because Brad and I have been really good at crunching in episodes and moving heaven and earth to have the show remain weekly. I think that was our biggest goal when we set out to do this show. Brad had done a few other podcasts before, but we wanted to give you, the listener, the opportunity to know when the show was going to be. Every Tuesday morning for 5 years, an episode of Toon Talk Weekly came out. And that's pretty cool. That sounds pretty cool to say now. But, I think where we're at with the show right now, and a lot of this is on me. I don't want to lump Brad in here as well. Brad's been more pushing that I think he would have wanted to keep doing the show if possible, but where a lot of my time and creative energy these days is going is into this, to more of a career change. It's shifting into the world of freelance, and so a lot of my energy and thoughts and what I'm thinking about are focused on setting myself up to do well in that realm as we move forward. So for the time being, I don't want to make any promises, but Toon Talk Weekly We're no longer going to produce the show. And I remember when I brought this up to Brad, I brought it up a few times, just wondering what to do with it. It is, not every week's a winner, but that's with any podcast. Not every week you're as excited as maybe you want to be. And when I had brought this up to Brad, he said, well, you don't want to leave people wondering or like hoping, right? Because in my heart of hearts, I want to tell everyone, I want to tell you guys that we're going to do the show again someday. Because I feel bummed out that I was not as good at reaching out for interviews, even with friends, because there's a lot of cartoons we didn't even cover. It's so funny to, I mentioned to folks or friends that I have a cartoon podcast, and they say, "Oh, have you covered this? Oh, have you covered this?" And there's some stuff we just never did. Some stuff that was classic that we never did. And it's because we had every intention of getting a friend or guest who loved that show to get on. And that's what, I dropped the ball there. I didn't reach out. I know we really wanted to do, we had Chris Schmidt on for the reboot episode, but he also loved Rocko's Modern Life. And I thought that would have been a great guest for that. We were talking with another friend who adores the Batman the Animated Series, a series that I never got around to watching. I can't believe I watched a bunch as a kid, but never for the show. The list goes on. I think there's so many shows that we held off on. I think Venture Bros was another one, or Squidbillies. I have a friend who's really into Adult Swim and would have loved to talk about those shows. But it just came down to that my head is not in the podcast right now, and that's tough. And even though it's not a huge commitment, time-wise in a week or whatever, but I think that I'm not delivering the best show that I could because my heart and my head are not in it. And that feels bad. I like that I'm being consistent, cool, but I'm not putting out the best thing I think I possibly could. So yeah, where do you go? Like I said, for the time being, we're not going to produce the show anymore. All the episodes are archived and they'll be up. I think I'm going to throw them all up on archive.org too, so you can get to any of them at any time. But you guys, if you've been a long-term listener, you would have noticed that just slowly, I think things started slipping through the cracks. For how busy things have gotten, I would miss something or mess something up, whether it's like a post or forget to post on Instagram or whatever. And so I just felt like I was not doing you guys, the listeners, a good service for doing this. But, it's been really cool over the last 5 years developing a show, developing a voice, developing a style and a format. We had another podcast together called The Lane for a while. I think it was for a year and a half maybe, and that was really cool because we got to talk a lot about video games that we were really into at the time. It's a 3-chair show, so it's nice to have the differing opinions. That stuff was fun, and I don't think this is the end of me podcasting forever. If for whatever reason you enjoy my opinions or my voice on something, I sure can't stand my own monotone voice, but I don't doubt this will be my last podcast ever. I do have some other ideas, but in the meantime, they're kind of on the back shelf while I focus on career and life stuff. But Brad's still podcasting. You still hear Brad. You can head over to, he does a weekly beer podcast called Chicago Beer Pass. That's been going on close to as long as this, maybe a little bit less. I can't quite remember when he started that, 13, 14 maybe. So if you still want to hear Brad, he's still in those same channels and all that. So that's pretty easy to do. I think what's been most interesting about doing the show has been just the feedback. It didn't come in droves or anything, but I read every message. I read every comment, for better or worse. I don't know how many times I read comments on YouTube because we started doing the video show, and just would show them to Brad, and I would just be crushed for a day. It was not a good time, but it's part of the show. It's part of putting your opinion and your ideas out there, and people have the right to criticize, and that's totally fine. But over the years, I received a number of really touching emails that, folks like the show, and I'm humbled. I'm proud that we made something that people look forward to and that they like, that they want to listen to, right? And if the show were to ever come back again, I think I would want to focus more on the quality of it and maybe not rushing in to like do something every single week just to do it every single week. I think it's just easier to, as I mentioned earlier, it's just easier to be on autopilot and not treat every episode as special, I guess. They don't necessarily have to be. I think it's just like, I don't know, it's a very personal medium. It's a thing that you focus on for a while and then put it out there in the world, and hopefully people enjoy it or get some sort of enjoyment out of it. So, but I wanted to leave you all with just kind of a little update. Apologies you missed the episode last week, but it's just been on my mind for a while as to what do we do with the show moving forward. I know that in the short term, I will miss it dearly. It's been a trip. It's been a rush. We threw around ideas for like, do we go to like 280? I think 278 was the last episode. Do we hold out and we go to 300? And at the end of the day, those are just numbers. It's cool, I guess, to say that you had a 300 episode podcast, but I think this is as good a time as any to maybe move on. And so with that, it's been awesome. It's been awesome being your host for the show. I know Brad's loved doing the show too. Whether we were tired or didn't like the cartoon that much or whatever it was, 5 years we showed up. A little over 5 years. Showed up every week and got a show out for you guys. So the response has been humbling. The fact that anybody listens at all has been humbling. And I can't thank you enough, the listener, for that. So look forward to more stuff from us in the future, whatever that might be. Obviously, this feed's going to stay up as far as I know. I think that should all be there. And if not, I'll point all the social accounts so you guys can find any and all past episodes if you ever want to listen. And of course, you can follow me out over on Twitter at Jacob Williams, my Instagram at TheJakeW, if you want to find any of my art stuff or any of that stuff that I'm working on. And of course, follow Brad. Brad's still doing his Beer Pass podcast and other things. He's over at digitalhitchhiker.com. This is his blog. And at BRad, he's probably more active on Twitter and Instagram at BRad. So I guess in closing, this has been, pretty tough, somber episode. I'm sorry. So whatever. And you can also probably hear my dog chugging a ton of water in the background. So that's very emotional, I know. So just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for letting us into your earbuds all these years, for letting us into your lives. Hopefully we provided some entertainment. Hopefully we weren't too boring along the way. And hopefully you enjoyed this journey or learned about a new cartoon or a new artist along the way, because that was the point. It's just to be fun and just to experience different cartoons and different media that we don't often get to. It was a fun, interesting, forcible way to try new things from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for listening.